Hi, I'm J. Rachel Addison.
And I'm Miles Stokes.
And we're the hosts of Jay and Miles Explain the XMen, a weekly podcast all about the ins, the outs, and the retcons of comics' greatest superhero soap opera.
We're also the hosts of Jay and Miles Review the X-Men,
which you're watching right now,
where we talk about the X books that come out each week.
This week, we're going to be looking at the books of July 13th, 2016, as well as taking a peek at the new the upcoming Marvel Now lineup.
Indeed. And hey, welcome back. You live again.
Thank you. And I got a haircut.
Is that what you were doing all this time? You told me you were sick.
It's a really good haircut.
Took a long time.
I mean, it's the same one I always get, but still.
Quality takes time. I'll buy that.
You want to review some comics?
Let's do it.
First up is Old Man Logan number 8, written by Jeff Lemire, with art by Andrea Sorrentino and colors by Marcello Maiolo. This is a one-shot wrapping up the second major arc of Old Man Logan. And man, it's really, really, really good. I mentioned, I think, last issue of this book that, number 7 was what absolutely sold me on it, that I'd been lukewarm to warm. And then with that, it just clicked. And that really continues here.
It absolutely does. And yeah, I think having a sort of a one-shot follow-up issue to the hugely emotional stuff we've been seeing, which of course itself is hugely emotional, the one-shot, was a really good plan on Lemire's part.
Yeah, leaving some room for us to catch our breath and also to resolve some of the baggage that this version of Logan is bringing into the world.
So much baggage.
Leaves him free to interact with current storylines in ways that he really couldn't before, I think. Mm-hmm. The last two storylines were very, very much and just and specifically about his past, and I feel like this one gives us a clean start to move forward in ways we may not have had before on this title.
It also focuses on probably his strongest relationship in the present day. Well, I guess one of his two strongest, because I think the other one is Storm, but with young Jean Grey. And this was a dynamic that I was a little skeptical of at first because, they've been romantically involved, whatever. But what it's turning into, this sort of like father-daughter, damaged old veteran / supportive optimistic teenager thing, I totally buy. What it actually reminded me of was, as much as I wasn't a big fan of the Weapon X scene in X-Men Apocalypse, the movie, the interaction between Jean and Logan and that I thought was really cool. And this is reminiscent of that, but much deeper.
Interesting. One of the things I like about the two of them together as a pair of characters, which wasn't really explored in this, is that they're both basically displaced in time. Mm-hmm. They're both out of place in this timeline, and they're both kind of dealing with a world that's off-kilter from the ones they're used to. And Logan has very much tried to keep a foot in the world that he's from, and Jean has very, very much tried to make a break with it. She's split from her former teammates, she's gone on. And while this is very much Logan's story, that makes them a very good balance as mutual foils.
Yeah, it's true. She is a bit separate. She hasn't mentioned Bernard the Poet even once since she got here. He's all I think about personally, and I'm not even from the 60s.
Maybe that's just a really private memory, man.
It's true. She keeps it core. It's like right next to the White Phoenix in her heart is Bernard the Poet.
Some things just can't be expressed in words.
But they can be expressed in rhyme.
That's still words. Maybe some things just can't be expressed without someone barefoot playing the bongo drums behind you.
I'm just saying you can rhyme noises. Rah and grah kind of rhyme. It's like a slant rhyme. It's a noisy slant rhyme. Have you heard my new band, Noisy Slant Rhyme? We're terrible. Continue.
Anyway, we've talked about Sorrentino's art and how he's really, really strong as an action artist, as a layout designer. Something we haven't gotten a lot of chance to see him do are quiet scenes, talking heads, and more slowly paced character moments, which is what this issue is. And it's really nice seeing him step into that. I really wondered how he would do for that, just because so much of what he specializes in is sequences of big explosive moments and those just big cinematic spreads.
And thematically shaped panels, don't forget. We get one of those here. There's a Punisher skull.
That's true.
Yeah.
But no, it's lovely. He actually, the warmth, and Maiolo is a huge part of this too, because the colors are such a significant part of this book. And Sorrentino and Maiolo, I really can't picture Sorrentino without Maiolo's colors.
Right. There's a 2-page spread near the beginning, because what this issue does is it flashes back and forth between Logan's past of when all the heroes were killed by the villains in his timeline and the present day, him talking to Jean. And there's this 2-page spread of just a demolished, presumably New York City, with a helicarrier having crashed into it and buildings just smashed into pieces and leaned over, and the villains rising up, and the colors in that, just the terrifying, sickly orange is perfect.
Now, you use the word cinematic a lot when I talk about Sorrentino and Maiolo. Mm-hmm. And here, it's got another very, very specifically evocative quality. But when he gets into the quieter stuff, when he gets into the group scenes, when he gets into the more casual dynamics, it reminds me so much of just those snapshot moments, those incredibly vivid memories that exist almost super saturated in your mind, in the eternal present, no matter how much time passes. the art feels like that.
And thematically, that's absolutely perfect, as Logan is trying to let these things go and can't, and that's what this issue is about, Jean trying to help him do so.
Yeah, I think Lemire is at his best in quieter spaces. He's good at writing tension and he's good at writing action, but where he really excels, at least on this title, is as a character writer. And seeing him get to really dig his claws into that, and Sorrentino and Maiolo just take it and soar, is fantastic. I realize I'm getting kind of a pterodactyl carrying off its narrative prey metaphor going here, and I feel okay with that. This is a great book, and possibly also a pterodactyl.
Our second book is All New X-Men number 11, written by Dennis Hopeless, with pencils by Mark Bagley, inks by Andrew Hennessy, and colors by Nolan Woodard. So this is the conclusion to the All New X-Men iteration of Apocalypse Wars, and it certainly is an ending and not the ending that I expected, but we're getting ahead of ourselves. So yes, in this we last left young Beast strapped to a big X-shaped cross, Conan style, and also that one X-Men cover style, and Evan and Saban Nur, young teenage, everything is actually okay with this kid Apocalypse, trying to figure out what to do and racing to get him back. And what this issue I think excels most at is not necessarily as a bunch of action scenes, although we certainly do have a great many fight scenes, which are, fine.
Honestly, I think the fight scenes are by far and away the weakest part of this issue.
Yeah, they're just sort of okay. They're there. I mean, Bagley is a good visual storyteller, Hopeless is a good writer, but they're not as engaging as what the highlight was for me, which is the character work with Genesis, with Kid Apocalypse, with Evan Sabanur. Because, okay, so Evan's been presented as this sort of paragon up until this point.
Right.
He's a little bit of a background character sometimes. He's more of a supportive figure for a lot of his friends.
And we've gotten some insight into why he's that way. We've gotten, this arc has fleshed him out a little bit. But this particular issue gives him substance and gives him teeth and gives him depth that he really didn't have before. Honestly, I think Evan's developed more as a character in this one issue than in all of his previous appearances put together.
I'm not sure that I'd say that, but certainly this arc, easily. But yeah, what it does is it lets Evan be a flawed character. It lets Evan be scared and selfish and make bad decisions because of what he's scared of. So, I mean, we see him basically saying, screw the timeline, screw maybe even rescuing my friend from certain death. I need to make sure this kid doesn't become Apocalypse to prove to myself that I won't necessarily become Apocalypse. And having this kernel of just pure terror at the core of this amazingly kind, generous, deep and compassionate character, that works for me. That works for me really well because nobody's that good or that bad. It's always a mix.
Yeah, that agonized blend of selfishness and altruism he's got here is, again, I mean, he's been an interesting character, an intriguing character from the start. But honestly, in some ways, he reminded me of Silver Age Jean Grey. He felt like a concept more than a character. And this arc has been all about giving him more substance and fleshing him out. But that clicked this issue in ways that it didn't before. Because, we learned more of his motivation before, but we didn't really see him make bad choices. We didn't really see him panic and play the odds and gamble wrong and keep going with it until now. And getting to see him as flawed in the ways he is, and not just scared, but selfish in response to that fear, makes me care more about this character than I ever have before. Yeah,
and that's where, once again, All New X-Men under Hopeless feels a whole lot like the best parts of New Mutants back in the day. I also really enjoyed the way that Beast was written, because, while he is a captive toward the beginning, he's the one who really makes the decisions that decide how the story plays out.
We see so little of them, though. That's one of my two gripes about this issue. Beast feels underwritten to me, and some of that is just an issue of length. There's only so much space. Evan had a specific arc, and that took up most of it.
I'm not sure that I agree with that, actually, because while Beast isn't in there as much as Evan, or as much as the fight scenes that do drag a little bit, I mean, what we see is him talking a lot about the butterfly effect. We see, him basically telling Evan, no, you can't do this. And this makes sense because all of the all-new X-Men, all the time displaced teens, are reacting to who they've seen themselves turn into in this future.
Yeah.
And Hank has seen Hank the Elder turn into somebody who messes around with time travel and ruins everything, who has the best of intentions turn into the worst of results. And so seeing this Hank turn into a character who is a little bit cold, who looks a little bit less at, people and their feelings and the immediate concerns they have, and more at the big picture, seeing him be that kind of utilitarian figure, like a little Egon Spengler in a way, that really works for me. We get to see Evan be flawed, sure, but we also get to see this young Hank McCoy be flawed, and I love it.
Okay. I will buy that. I wish we'd gotten to see a little bit more of that. I think you read more between the lines than I did. My other gripe with it is the art in the especially the action scenes, because they feel slapdash to me. They don't have the dynamism that I expect from Bagley. Hopefully it's just an off issue, but and again, you were right that isn't where the meat of this issue lies, but it was kind of a jarring difference.
Sure, and it is where a lot of the page count lies, certainly.
Yeah, that's true.
Another thing I do want to say, I don't want to give too much away. We try not to spoil, big reveals or endings. Mm-hmm. But this is a major all-new X-Men story that's part of a, if not crossover, at least themed event. And it's got kind of a downer ending that's in some ways frustrating for the reader as much as it is for the characters.
Yeah.
And I really applaud Hopeless for going for something like that, because a lot of writers wouldn't. A lot of writers would try to have the, ticker tape parade, feel good, everything works out okay, or at least we all learn something about ourselves. And the way this ends, just kind of everything sucks for everybody.
Yeah, we all learned something about ourselves, and it really wasn't something that any of us wanted to know.
Right. We all learned that essentially life isn't fair, and caring a whole lot about something isn't necessarily enough. And it's a hard lesson, and for a book about teenagers, I think that's a really important lesson to portray.
So that's 2 of 2 for this week. Miles, what's our pick?
I think we're going to have to go with Old Man Logan. As one-shots go, as done-in-one stories, it's basically everything I would want. It also takes the book in some cool new directions, which is to say a little bit deeper into the character as opposed to, claws and slicing and pure angst. It highlights a really cool dynamic I'd love to see more of, Logan and Jean. It was just a really satisfying, heartwarming, emotionally affecting issue, so kudos to everybody involved.
It's not technically an X book. We also wanted to take a moment to give special notice to the short story War Machine in Civil War II Choosing Sides number 2. It's written by Jeremy Whitley, it's drawn by Marguerite Sauvage, and it made me cry, and it's amazing and lovely and perfect, and even if you're not following the event, I think it's pretty accessible and well worth picking up.
Yeah, and I mean, the only X character who is focal in it is Storm, and she's only in it for 2 pages, but I think those 2 pages are the strongest 2 pages she's been in since her ongoing.
I feel like if your Storm POV section starts with the panel, Storm is everything, you are doing it right.
Exactly. What about our panel of the week?
Our panel of the week is likewise from Old Man Logan, number 8. And I mentioned those snapshot moments of just sort of super saturated, this is the way I will remember this. And this is kind of the epitome of those panels for me, just this scene and this group of characters together.
Mm-hmm.
So Miles, I know you don't really do our social media, so you may not be up to date on what people have been tweeting us, but I gather that the world is ending again.
Right, yeah, so Marvel Now 2.0. Okay, so in the words of Hawkeye, okay, this looks bad. Basically, for anybody who hasn't seen the Marvel Now 2.0 previews that came out today and was leaked a day or 2 ago, depending on where you're looking, we've gotten a big look at what Marvel's going to look like after Civil War II. A lot of books have been announced, and the only X presence focally at all is the Death of X miniseries, which is going to reveal the Noodle incident, what Cyclops did in the 8-month gap.
Man, I really wish they wouldn't. I wish they would just make it a running joke at this point.
Right.
Now, that's led to a lot of speculation that Marvel is planning to kill the X-line again. Because it's roughly time for those rumors to revise, and admittedly it looks iffy. We are inclined to disagree for a couple specific reasons. The first is something that came up in a CBR column today where I believe they explicitly stated that they weren't.
In fact, I have a quote. If you don't see your favorite characters or series in the listings, we're looking at you, X-fans. Don't worry. Marvel has informed CBR that this is just a taste of what's in store for the Marvel Universe as 2016 closes out. The X-Men, Wolverine, Spider-Man, and more will all be seen in their regular series when October solicitations roll around later in July.
So that's worth noting. This is an incomplete list. There's more to come. How much X content it's going to include, we don't know yet, but at least nominally, there's going to be some. They're not canceling the X-line.
Right. I will say that I went through the solicits for August and September, and a bunch of stories in the X-line start in August, and there's one, in fact, that even starts in September. So unless they're going to cut off stories in the middle, I really don't think we're going to see...
Or just have a lot of super short stories.
Or a lot of super short stories. I don't think we're going to see our books canceled. There is one 2-part story in one of the books. I forget which. That said, there's certainly no denying that by choosing to not put anything beyond a single miniseries X-related in Marvel Now 2.0 previews, Marvel's definitely downplaying the X-Men the way they have done in all of their marketing and merchandising for quite a long time.
Or feeding the rumors. They're obviously aware of them, given that quote.
Oh, yeah.
And
I think it's some trolling.
I wonder, too, how much of this is holding on to X title announcements until after Death of X, or to basically play off the momentum and media presence of Death of X, because right now Marvel Now is getting the attention in the relaunch, and I mean, editorially and marketing wise, I could definitely see holding titles until they can be more front and central in the headlines. So not just the X-Men, but if there are other series that are yet to be announced, looking for a more specific and series-specific hook to hang those announcements on.
Could be. It's hard to say. Regardless, I mean, I don't think X-Men's ever going to go away completely. It's certainly gotten smaller and less prominent. Maybe that'll keep being that way, maybe not. I know there are rumors that Marvel's going to be involved in the very recently announced X-Men TV series that is going to be a joint venture between them and Fox, so maybe that'll mean they'll want to do more stuff. Who knows at this point?
Yeah, I mean, I think I've made my position kind of clear on catastrophizing, which is that I think it's kind of pointless. At this point, what I'm willing to say is that we don't have the full picture. There's clearly more to it. The sky may in fact be falling, but we really have no clear way to know for certain, so I'm withholding judgment for the time being.
Indeed. That said, we did learn some extra-related things from the Marvel Now previews, so we'll just do a quick rundown of the X characters that are going to be in other X books that we do know are going to exist.
No, other non-X books.
Other non-X books, yes.
Non-X books, because otherwise it's just Death of X.
It's true. But yes, so there is Death of X. That's going to be a miniseries that shows this big conflict between the mutants and the Inhumans that Cyclops apparently did something horrible in. Who knows? It does sound really fun. The artist did mention that he was working on a 2-page spread that was just basically every single mutant in existence, so that'll at least be cool to see.
At this point, it's been so built up that it's going to have to be spectacular to not feel anticlimactic. Like, they're going to have to actually end the world. Not in the comics.
I think Cyclops just didn't know what silverware to use at a fancy Inhumans dinner, and they got super offended.
No, I like the typo theory that we got.
Oh, yeah.
In the Noodle Incident contest, which I will link to in the video comment.
Yes, indeed.
It's also a video, and it's delightful.
So that's Death of X. As far as non-X books, so we have Storm showing up in at least one issue of Black Panther, along with a couple of other Black characters, Luke Cage and Misty Knight. Always happy to see more Storm, and she and Black Panther certainly have some interesting history. We have Domino and the very movie-ish version of Negasonic Teenage Warhead showing up in Deadpool and the Mercs for Money. Makes sense for both of them. I mean, Domino, she's been a number of places, but that is certainly a place she could be.
I am so curious as how they're going to rationalize having Negasonic Teenage Warhead as a character in the comics. She has died twice at this point. Mm-hmm. And had a totally different power set. I guess it could just be a legacy name. My
hope is that somebody asks and she just glares at them witheringly and then it never comes up again.
That would actually, I would settle for that. Deadpool could get away with that.
It's true. We also have Sunspot and Cannonball leading the U.S. Avengers, which is basically a follow-up to Al Ewing's new Avengers run that he's currently working on. I can see that being a ton of fun. The way he writes, especially Sunspot, but also Cannonball, is awesome.
Is that the one where Sunspot just looks like Jason Todd? With the white streak, and also he's inexplicably a white person?
No. He's drawn very Sunspotty by the current artist, so that makes me happy.
Current, but there was, in a solicitation, there was a... Yeah.
I don't know. It looks all right to me. Yeah. And then we have Rogue, Cable, and Quicksilver, so 2.5 X-Men characters, in Uncanny Avengers, which is basically where they've been for a while. It's a sort of quasi-X-ish book. So far, most of the plots haven't been terribly X-related.
It's an Avengers book with some X-Men in it.
Yeah, basically. We also have Cyclops joining the Champions, young Cyclops, that is, which is a team of sort of rebellious young characters, Ms. Marvel, Nova, Hulk, Miles Morales, Viv Vision. That looks like it could be a lot of fun. It's Mark Waid and Humberto Ramos, and I'm really excited about that. I don't know if we're going to be covering that. We haven't decided what we're going to be covering from the new Marvel initiative, but we'll sure as hell be reading that one.
Yeah, I'm really curious about that one, actually, narratively, too, because I think it's one of the first times we've seen Cyclops on a non-X team.
Yeah, maybe the first time. I think you're right. And then we have the Shi'ar in the Mighty Thor. Apparently the Shi'ar are going to war with Asgard. They're X-y. I don't know. I love Thor, so I'll be reading that.
I mean, they're X-y if that's your type.
They're X-y and I'm not going to finish that sentence. And then we have Jubilee in Patsy Walker, a.k.a. Hellcat, which I feel great about. So, those characters will be around, even if all of the X books are canceled so hard that the previous X issues that we've been talking about in the podcast immediately cease to be. So at least there's that. But we'll have the October solicit soon. We'll have some real information then.
I think I should get to say it.
Do you have to say it?
I really want to say it. I might need to say it.
Could you at least say it quietly?
You got to yell last week.
I did get to yell at last week.
And there are some things that really should never be said quietly.
Okay.